Fantastic. Hey everyone, and thank you so much for turning up to the Beer Cartel Investor webinar. I'm joined here by Richard and Jeff, who are the founders of Beer Cartel. And look, it's been great to work with you guys actually, and really see how much love there is for the craft beer industry and a business which was serving everybody's craft beer needs throughout a whole of COVID. Really, when we couldn't get out, we couldn't go anywhere, and we really wanted to be able to just enjoy craft beer, but not just the small, not just the typical craft beer, but the really unique stuff, which is really what you guys specialize in. And before we get into the depths of the investment offer and the business itself, I'd love you guys to just quickly introduce yourselves to everybody.
Sure. So I'm Richard, one of the co-founders, originally from New Zealand, so came over to Australia 16 years ago, and absolutely fell in love with craft beer back in my heyday in New Zealand. So when I finished university, the first job I had was doing a market research project for a craft brewery in New Zealand, and I got paid in beer, and it was very good beer.
Awesome.
That kicked off my passion for beer, and alongside that, I've always had a passion for entrepreneurship and businesses, and that's kind of what led us to Beer Cartel.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'm Jeff, the other co-founder of Beer Cartel. My heritage is from Belgium, so I always joke that it was either going to be beer or chocolate. Really fantastic categories, but for me, it just happened to be beer. So in 2007, I had taken a world trip, 9 months, and part of that was to go and visit family in Brussels. And I had a cousin that took me to the Brussels Beer Festival, as well as the back streets of Brussels, and experienced some fantastic beers. And I came back here, Rich and I were working together, and I kind of said, there's this world out there of just amazing beer. And the challenge we had then was just to try and source it. So that's kind of where Beer Cartel started, was from a want to access the beers ourselves, and then also kind of thinking, well, there's other people that want this amazing beer that we found in Finland for Richard, or in Belgium for myself. And prior to that, we were kind of aimed to the mainstream beers that you'd find in bottle shops and bars. So prior to that, I was like a Carlton draft drinker, or Tooheys Extra. And so very quickly got through the ranges of James Squire, and Guinness was probably a staple that you could find in some pubs. But outside of that, a craft beer tap was next to nowhere.
Yeah. Oh, we all grew up drinking pretty dreadful beers, actually, looking back on it, and not knowing that there were other options out there, which people just really hadn't been exposed to yet or experimented with, and we were always told that it was just limited because people just didn't get creative with it. But I've just realized I haven't introduced myself. My name is Robin. I work here at Virtual, and I head up the campaign management for Beer Cartel, basically, and helping these guys to not only manage the campaign, but also see success for them. So really, today's webinar is all about you attending, in terms of you better understanding the business and also having your questions answered. So we've got a number of questions which the guys have been asked, which really, embody all of the questions that have come through about the investment opportunity, typical, knowledge that you'd want to know about an investment opportunity up and coming. But we'd also love to invite you to ask questions so we can answer them here for you right now, and really use the Q&A feature here in Zoom, because I'm going to be monitoring this and picking it up as and when we're going through some of these questions. But before we do that, why don't you guys take us back to the start and really, tell us about how Beer Cartel has become such a success as a craft beer retailer online since you started in 2009.
Yeah, so it harks back to that trip for me in 2007 in Brussels, and I came back, and Rich and I used to work in the corporate world in market research. And I had a list as long as my arm in terms of business ideas I'd kind of thought of, but the one that really stuck with was this idea of getting amazing beer, because as soon as I came back, I was trying to get it, and I couldn't. And then that kind of forged the thought of an online beer subscription. And at the time, I was actually renting a house in Drummoyne, and my landlord was actually in Singapore, and I actually rang her up and I asked if I could apply for one of the first liquor licenses in New South Wales for an online liquor license. And luckily she said yes. So the first liquor license was in the lounge room of the rental property I was in. And we started out in a Kennard self-storage shed. And so, yeah, it was probably half the size of the room that we're in here, and about, what do you think, about 30 odd beers, 20 to 30 beers?
Yeah, 30 odd beers. And each month we'd take over that shed, packing to all the beer subscription members that we had. We were always, from the very get-go, we always had a focus on never having the same beer twice. So we were always on the grounds looking for new beers to try and to offer to people, and just expose them to the amazing world of good beer. So we did that for 2 years. And then 2011, we took over the bottle shop and warehouse that we are now in Artarmon in Sydney. And we've just gone from there, really. So we started, when we moved into the store, we had 30, I think it was 32 beers. And now we've got 1,000 plus, with the 20 to 30 new beers coming every week. So it's dramatically changed. The craft beers evolved hugely in Australia, and we've been a massive part of that as well.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that is actually interesting, a lot of businesses have actually gone from bricks and mortar to online.
Of course.
We kind of went the other way around, because we started in 2009, and this is at a time where even the biggest players like Dan Murphy's weren't even selling alcohol online. So we were kind of ahead of where the main players in the market were, which actually meant it was the concept of kind of buying online generally, this just online retail, but also alcohol online wasn't completely there in 2009. So we actually had to re-examine our business plan, which was, let's do this thing online, and then pivot and go, well, hang on, we've actually got to go back to bricks and mortar while having an online presence, which we were really keen to continue to forge, because that meant we could actually not just service a local community, but we could service all of Australia. And by doing that, now we're just in a position where, say, our online business is where most of the growth is coming from, and is the key thing of our business. All the growth, I should say, is coming from, and is basically what Beer Cartel is based on, is online now. So we really had a shift to bricks and mortar, and now we're back to where we had kind of wanted to start.
Absolutely.
It kind of goes, we wanted to start with online and grow online, but we were kind of almost too early. So then to I guess help us grow and stay alive was to move into the retail scene, and then from there we've actually used that as a launching pad to grow online and take it to where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody's already asked a question just around if the webinar will be recorded. I can promise you, to everybody who's registered or is here, we will send a copy of the recording of the webinar if you aren't able to stay until the end. So, don't sweat it. You'll be able to receive the whole thing and check it out in your own time as well. But even just moving down on some of the questions, you've already explained really the transition of not only starting online, going to retail, and then coming back to online, because at the time, 2009, even the buying behavior of individuals was just so different. It wasn't that long ago really, but people just didn't want to buy products online in the same way. And even I think from my own personal experience coming over from the UK less than 3 years ago, I can see that even over in the UK, there's a much stronger trend towards people wanting to buy everything online, even compared with Australia. So I even think that there's room for Australia to continue to close that gap of purchasing power online. But in the business itself, we've obviously seen the craft beer movement just go from strength to strength. But I'm really interested to hear from your perspective what the main differences are in the industry now compared to what it was when you first started, and how it all began. Because you really must, when you first started this, it was a pioneering effort to really combine all the craft beers in Australia that were available for people to buy. So How does it look now in comparison?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just like you touched on is just the actual growth of the category itself. So there's two things. There's the growth of the category itself and what I touched on before, which is the growth of just online and e-commerce. So the category itself, you know, it's gone from 100 to 200 breweries to over 700 at the moment. So you've got this, people have got access and there's a hunger for choice and variety. And there's the ability for people to actually get that. In the past, I remember when we first started, to get even beers from, say, Beryl in Western Australia was nearly impossible unless you were wanting to do a complete pallet, which at the time, because of the infancy of our business in 2009, we couldn't justify those costs and the commitment to a full pallet. So things like the distribution and logistics that underpin the industry are significantly different. The hunger for consumers and beer drinkers to seek out different beers is just, I mean, there's a reason why we're able to stock 1,000 different beers and have those beers turn over, and every week get 20 to 30 new beers each week, is because there's an appetite for it, and the breweries are actually releasing that. And to that point, one of the biggest changes I think that's happened in the last 5 years is actually the shift from bottled product and keg product in some instances to cans. So mobile canning for the industry has actually meant that in the past, where we could get 5 to 10 new beers a week because the rest of the breweries were putting their beers into kegs to have them in venues, now you've got mobile canning, which just, they turn up to a brewery and they can can on site without the breweries having to invest in very expensive canning lines. And beers that used to only be available on tap are now available in 375ml cans.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is just that the quality of beer in Australia has increased significantly. So if you go back 5 years ago, everyone was buying sort of Stone from the US or Brewdog from Scotland. Now that the stuff that's in our own backyard is as good as anything overseas, and we're getting it fresher. And we know the sort of stories behind the breweries. We get to go and meet the people behind the breweries. We get to visit the actual breweries themselves. And so there's just this amazing kind of scene that's come out of Australia, and people are really just, that they absolutely love it. And it's like a Saturday can now be going to visit a new craft brewery and seeing what they've got on offer. So it's
so true. Yeah.
Even in terms, Robin, like beer tourism a decade ago wasn't something that, you know, that you had. Now you've got in parts like Sydney or I think on the Gold Coast and Melbourne, you've got brewery tours that are being done by different companies that weren't around a decade ago. You've got people that go to regional places on holidays, especially now at the moment, while Australia is in a kind of lockdown sort of state, where people are going domestically, and it's actually while they're out domestically, one of the questions a lot of people ask us is like, hey, I'm going to this location in New South Wales. What's the brewery in that location? Or I'm going to regional Victoria. Which brewery should I drop in and see? And so you've got this, this demand for people wanting to have it as part of like a planned trip. It's amazing.
And it's all part of that sort of foodie movement. So people love great food, and beer is a great example of that foodie movement. It's about searching out new things to try, new things to explore, and it's all about going on the sort of journey into the world of beer.
Yeah, definitely. And really even just elaborating on that journey of beer, you've had some really significant milestones in the business, and you know, you've achieved a lot. You've got some really, like, you don't just sell, you know, craft beer online. You really have some interesting products that people, you know, have really bought into, such as the, you know, the beer calendar. And like, you know, I think from a milestone perspective, what you've achieved, there's some really significant highlights, and especially your growth last year, which was hugely significant. So without me going through it, why don't you guys talk through some of your most significant milestones today in the business?
Sure. I think the first one is when we took over the bottle shop and warehouse that we've got here. So 2011, moving in here, we actually, when we moved in, we had another business that we kind of took over at the same time, which was a corporate supplies business.
Mm.
And at that stage, that business was probably 80% of the business that we had growing here. And what was it? 3 years later, we managed to sell that, and then the whole business, the whole area was Beer Cartel, and we've grown it to a stage where it was completely self-sufficient. So I think that was definitely a great starting point. Our website our current website, which we launched in 2015, I think it was.
Yep.
So it sits on BigCommerce's enterprise platform, and that's been a huge thing in just giving us a platform that we can really leverage from. And I think the other thing from your side of things was the advent calendar that you kind of came up with. So,
yeah, I mean, for me, there's a couple of big milestones. One thing that I think we don't reflect on it enough is just the sheer fact that the two original co-founders are still part of the business, and the strength of the team that we've been able to build around us is pretty amazing. I mean, at the moment, we've got a fantastic team that kind of works with us. We're not just a two-man band trying to do it all. We've got a great team that supports us every single day. And so when I reflect back on that, and the sheer fact that the two co-founders are still in business over a decade, I think is often quite rare in small and medium enterprise. There's definitely things like the advent calendar. So being able to kind of look at the market and not just go, okay, we're selling beer, which is a fantastic product. But it's also kind of going, well, how can we actually conceptualize this to be a bit different and add even more excitement to people's lives or people's experience when they're actually consuming beer or receiving beer as a gift?
Yeah.
The Advent calendar is definitely one of those, and we've actually reiterated that. I think it's currently onto the third iteration in terms of the box, and now actually on the fourth iteration for the 2021. But yeah, from an idea where it was a basic box with just a piece of cardboard on top to now having sold 20,000 odd. Yeah, it's great to be able to kind of play around with ideas and then look to implement them and test things out and take the business forward.
I think so. The Advent calendar, we've also evolved it. So we had an isolation one last year, and there may be a few people on this that have just started receiving our Christmas and July Advent calendar as well. So we had a very limited number that we produced for Christmas and July. Yeah, so there's that. I think things like going through COVID last year and just the success we saw and being able to actually cater for that demand. We had a lot of brewery partners that were doing it tough in their sort of cellar door side of things. And so our online grew so much that we could actually support them by actually buying more of their product, which was great. And then the other thing was that we got to give hospitality people that had sort of lost their jobs during the downturn a role here. So we increased the amount of people that we employed. I think we doubled it from the year before, maybe even tripled it. So that's a
great.
Nice kind of good news story that we had as well.
Yeah, fantastic. And we've actually, because you've talked about COVID sales, I'm actually just going to throw it over to one of the questions that we've got in the Q&A, and then we will go through some of these. It's just I think I'd really love to try and tie some of them into topics. Drew here has asked a question around how much of the COVID growth in online sales do you see being maintained or increased moving into a post-COVID COVID work environment, obviously financial year 22, 23, 24, etc. So, you've had a huge amount of growth over the last year, and where do you see Beer Cartel, and being able to maintain that?
So I guess for COVID, it's interesting. We actually closed our store for the first 4 months of the year, or 4 months of COVID during the lockdown. So from March till I think it was the end of June. And we did that, I guess, to sort of look after our staff, but it was also during that stage online had grown so much that if we actually tried to keep the store open, we would have really struggled just because of the sheer amount of demand. Now looking into this year, we've got the store open and we're hitting numbers above what we did during that period last year. So we're actually seeing growth on the big growth that we had last year. Last month was a higher month than we did the year before. I think it'll be exactly the same this month as well. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity for continuing to grow it going forward. So I think the one thing that COVID did is actually help people get into buying online. And they found it so convenient, so easy, that it's something that's just not going to stop. So it's going to, there's huge amount of sort of opportunity going forward across all of online. And yeah, we're just going to do our best to make sure we're the best position to accelerate on that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like your stock is massive. It is a huge range of beer itself. Really interested because people have asked around this, how fast you can kind of continue to see this growing. We know that craft beer has got to a huge market share in, you know, the likes of the States. And if we look overseas in other jurisdictions, this has really grown and continue to grow. And people kind of compare that to the likes of Australia and say, well, there is absolutely a lot of scope here. Do you see that continuing to grow quite a lot? And, you know, when it comes to the future, in addition to obviously your sales, where do you see that looking as a business?
So as far as the amount of range, so we've got about, what is it, 1,100 odd?
Yeah, between 1,100 to 1,200 is what it kind of balances out to be, just roughly.
Yeah, and we don't want to go above that. We want to focus on just having the best beers that we possibly can. So when you've got 1,100 odd, that's a huge range to choose from. And so the main part we want to focus on is just that having great beers that people are going to love. So we want to have people coming back, having such a great experience with the beers that we've got, that we range, that they want to keep coming back, that they trust us, that they see us as the experts that they want to be buying from.
And I think, so to the point of the range of 1,100 to 1,200, every week we get 20 or 30 new beers. And so the range, there's a static part to our range, but there's also like a transient part to the range where some of those 20 to 30 new beers, either we may be limited to how much we can actually access through an importer, or it could be that we're limited because it's a limited release beer and it only comes out once a year. And so the one thing with the range is that it's not the whole range isn't static. And so it back to one of my earlier points about just kind of offering that variety. I mean, 20 to 30 new beers means we get 1,000 to 1,500 new beers each year. So
yeah,
almost each year we're almost kind of in a way replacing the whole range, albeit keeping a static part of the range with beers that we know are highly sought after. So that alone kind of allows us to grow the range without growing it, if that makes sense.
No, of course.
About 400 or 500 beers that are kind of our sort of permanent fixtures. And then it's the beers that we cycle through.
Yeah.
Some of those beers we've had last one day. So we've done a one-day sale or one-day promo, and that beer's gone on the day. So we had a start with beer that lasted less than 24 hours. And we were the only people in Australia to actually get hold of that beer as well.
Fantastic. That's amazing. That's amazing. And Bill here has asked a question just around what form of investment you take. Bill, please do re-ask the question if we're answering this incorrectly, but effectively going ahead, this is going to be an equity crowdfunding round, which will be for ordinary shares in the business. So owning shares in Beer Cartel itself. In terms of anything else at the moment, I really, know that we're really purely just focused on the equity crowdfunding opportunity, which is ahead of us, which is, offering ordinary shares in Beer Cartel, which of course has had a really impressive track record so far and, has a lot of potential growth ahead of it. So please do re-ask it though, if there's anything else that you wanted to know just around the, the finances of the offer itself. Nikki here has just asked saying, just wanted to know what the capital market strategy is for the business, i.e. looking at tapping into the capital markets for say a Series A, Series B, pre-IPO or IPO raising in the medium term, looking to understand what a liquidity event would look like for investors. This is a question which everyone gets asked. Of course, it's really it's always in the business's interest to want to try to provide a liquidity event for investors who have come in. When that can happen is pretty ambiguous. I know that you guys have probably been asked this question 1,000 times before, but I'll throw over to you guys to really answer, and I'll just make sure that we kind of just take care of any potential ambiguity around an exit opportunity or event further from there.
So I guess our first focus is just growing business as much as we can.
Sure.
We do know from the online e-commerce side of things that from, I guess, looking to the future, it's when you start getting revenues of $20 million plus that you start getting a lot of kind of offers and a lot of people that are looking at you. At the moment, we just want to focus on growing the business. We see that there's huge opportunities still available. And so our, I guess, goal is to grow from where we are at the moment to doing around about 5 million for the year to then look to the future. We want to then get to that $10 million mark and then get to beyond that, to the sort of $20 million mark. So the main thing that I guess we want to do today is raise the funds so that we can get that growth underway and accelerate the massive growth that we've already been having. And then it's looking to the future, and we will be, I guess, open to I guess, help or ensuring that shareholders can get the best sort of realization of any investment that they make. But we want to make sure that we're doing right by them as well and getting that opportunity maximized.
And I think it's probably important maybe to note as well. So to date, the entire business has been funded by Richard and myself. So this is the first time that we're kind of opening up for investment, so to speak. And we've gone via the crowdfunding medium. So outside of a couple of family loans at the very start, which had been repaid, it was just basically self-funded by ourselves.
Yeah, and so that means that we've been, I guess, using the profits, reinvesting those into the business. But it means that we haven't had as big a, I guess, kitty to call upon to really help grow the business. So and that's what this opportunity is all about.
No, 100%, 100%. It's always, whenever a business is raising funds at this stage, the intention is to use the funds to go on and grow the business. Obviously, we can point towards a number of exit opportunities which have happened, in a similar industry and suggest that that's where the business wants to get to and what it could potentially look like. But through the likes of an IPO or a trade sale or potential dividends in the future, we know that Beer Cartel is going to be open to any of these if the opportunity arises. But in the medium to short term future, the funds will be used to go on and grow the business effectively. So yeah, no, absolutely, that's great. And we've had a question here from someone, and the questions are great. And I really love reading through some of these. So please do keep on adding them to the Q&A feature here. Somebody here has asked, how would Beer Cartel go about mitigating the risk from someone like Dan Murphy's moving further into the craft beer space? I'm sure you've got asked this one before.
So I guess from that perspective, our real strengths are the relationships that we've got with our suppliers, our experience and our knowledge, and just the sort of marketing that we can do as well. So I think all of those three things we can leverage really strongly. And being a smaller business, we're actually a lot more agile, and so we can actually get opportunities that the likes of Dan Murphy's can't get. So that they can't always get the latest limited releases. They can't get them and the 20 to 30 new beers we get every week, just because their systems, there's so many processes that they have to go through that they just can't do it with the same sort of speed.
Yeah.
So I think those are all real strengths that we can play to. I'm sure Dan Murphy's definitely has a focus on craft beer, and that they've had that for the last few years. So I guess for us, we've been still growing during that period, and if anything, our growth has only accelerated. So our main goal is to kind of play our own game, work to our strengths and just keep on growing through those.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think with the industry and the way it is, I really see both of you coexisting. Ultimately, like a lot of the way that the craft beer industry has grown, it's a lot of people wanting to continue to see the industry, have everybody have their own story and partake in it. And really, there's no need for a dominant player to stick out there, because people will go and visit a store one day and then say, well, actually, that new beer which I can't get from anywhere else, which has been exclusively released on Beer Cartel, I really want to try that. So I think there's absolutely scope for both of you to continue to coexist.
Absolutely. And it's things like ours. So we did a exclusive with Hop Products Australia last year. So we had 12 beers that were produced by 12 different breweries, all around the new Eclipse hop that Hop Products Australia just released. And that was something that was exclusive to us, so you couldn't get the pack anywhere else. And we're always having these sort of opportunities, whether it's with breweries or partners or whoever it may be, to do these kind of things. And that's stuff that people really love and really get excited by. We have our monthly beer subscription packs, and then off those, we also create like a limited tinny pack that's really popular, and that again is like an exclusive pack that we create, and it's something that definitely is a point of difference from us to other people.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Peter here has asked a question saying, great business you guys have developed and congratulations on the growth. Do you have a percentage or physical market share of the craft beer market that you're targeting? It's obviously, pretty hard to kind of pick this one out. Of course, you'd love to be able to say, well, this is the pie and we want this slice in the business itself, but it's very hard to kind of see this. But you are a pretty well-established business itself, and so it might be a case of, okay, well, we actually realistically think that we might be able to get to this stage in business and kind of maintain that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting while we're reasonably large, we're still a very, very tiny portion of the craft beer industry. So to even get to a 1% share would be absolutely huge.
And it's also a moving target.
At
the moment,
it is.
So we're operating two growth categories, one being online e-commerce and the other one being craft beer. And yeah, after the last kind of 12 months, as we talked about earlier, that target is moving in an upward kind of trajectory. So to say exactly the percentage would be quite hard to do. I guess to Richard's earlier points in terms of growth, we've got the details in our offer document in terms of what our current revenue is, and obviously it's about wanting to grow on top of that. So looking to kind of double would be our ambition to do that, and then it's probably more so looking at from a revenue perspective as opposed to a percentage of total market share.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, to get to even a 1% is would require a lot to kind of even think of the numbers. I think Dan Murphy's has around 327 stores across Australia, and then you add in all the other stores everywhere. The overall craft beer market is huge. The Craft Brewers Association recently put out their report just on the size of the market. I don't have the figures right in front of me, but I think it was around about close to $2 billion that the $2 billion that the industry helps create in the economy overall. So, and that's just an independent side of the craft beer industry. So it is a huge market, and yeah, we just want to, I guess, keep accelerating our share of it. Go from there.
Definitely. No, it's you're right when you say it's such a moving target, because it really is. You can't pinpoint exactly where it's going to be in a few years' time, and the even the growth market estimates might not have got it quite right, but it's really going to continue to grow. And we saw that with the likes of last year. And I think that leads perfectly into the next question, because somebody here has asked, are you able to divulge the percentage of growth for the past year? I think it would be great to really explain the past financial year and then what the current financial year has looked like. Because I know from, your growth perspective, if you look at it year on year, you've actually grown 25% year on year since inception. But last year was huge for the business itself in terms of what you managed to do.
Yeah, it was. So for this financial year, we're going to have done over 5 million in revenue. For the year prior, it was around about, and this again will be in the off document, was around about $3 million. The one thing to I guess add to that is we actually have another business called Bouquets, which is a gifting business as well. And that has now become a subsidiary of Beer Cartel. So that's happened in this financial year. And that is a business that was originally, I guess, acquired by both Jeff and myself as a separate entity called Bouquet Co. Proprietary Limited. That happened back in 2018. And that was a business that was small scale that we saw there was an opportunity in the beer gifting space, which we already kind of deliver through Beer Cartel. But we saw that there was an opportunity to really focus on that further. And that business is basically going to do $1 million this year, so up from just under 500,000 the year before. So we've had both Beer Cartel and the subsidiary Bouquets really grow strongly over the last year, which has been pretty exciting.
Those are some impressive figures. Like, congratulations, guys, on that growth. That's really impressive. And somebody here, I know we've already talked a bit about this, and you're probably going to get quite a few specific questions, but Nick here has asked, do you anticipate opening further retail outlets, or will the main focus remain online?
Yeah, so where most of our growth is coming from is online. And if we think back to one of the core reasons behind kind of starting Beer Cartel, apart from Richard and I loving beer and wanting to access it, one of our key things was wanting to be able to share that with other beer drinkers. And so for us, the opening new stores can be very capital intensive, and bang for buck, you get more value out of investing that into the online space.
Yeah.
And so for us, we're seeing we're seeing growth is there. We're well positioned with our experience over the last decade in e-commerce and online beer e-commerce specifically. That's where we're looking to invest more into, is in the online space.
Yeah. And I think it's very much playing to our strengths. We know online well, so we've been in it for 12 years now, and we don't have to worry about all the challenges of setting up different stores, finding new places, getting new leases, and everything. We can focus on what we're really strong at, build out our platforms, build out our marketing, build out the products that we know people absolutely love, and just really accelerating it as much as we can.
And online gives you much greater economies of scale.
Of course.
So in terms of where you're investing the money and then the sales rate that you then get from each dollar invested.
Oh, no, totally makes sense. And somebody here has asked, actually, a really interesting question. With the increase in sales, have you managed to negotiate better deals with your distribution partners in place?
Yeah, so it's always an ongoing thing. As we grow, then we're definitely taking advantage of better buying power. So Australia Post is one of our key partners. We're just having a review of that at the moment. But yeah, we definitely, the more you grow, the more that you're buying, we're always getting better deals, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And somebody here has said, I love what you do and love your vision. Can you please elaborate on the differentiation of Beer Cartel from its competitors? We've kind of talked about this already in relation to Dan Murphy's. I know that, we've talked about this in relation to Dan Murphy's, but perhaps there's other aspects of this you maybe want to elaborate on. Obviously, knowing the landscape of the business itself a lot better than most would.
Yeah, I think we've pretty well covered it. So it's all about the experience that we've got. So we've got a team of really passionate craft beer lovers. So we've got one that's going through the top kind of Cicerone studies at the moment. I think he's got the exam next week. So we've got people that are completely invested in craft beer. Alongside that is just the range that we've got. We actually don't have exactly the same kind of range as all other stores. So we try and have a point of difference. So alongside the sort of great craft beer we've got from Australia, we've got stuff from Germany and Belgium, UK, that's actually quite hard to get. And we know that some of these great heritage kind of brands that come from these countries are just so fantastic and so loved. But they're also, for most people, that they actually find them so hard to get hold of. So that's definitely part of it. We don't just focus on selling the beer. We're really passionate about the industry overall as well. So we created the Australian Craft Beer Survey. That was done as our way of giving back to the industry. So each year we do a survey with around about 20,000 people taking part. We put the report for free on our website, and that is to help the industry overall. So we know that breweries themselves don't know how to do research. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know how to create something that's going to give them value, but that they get told that they need this data to help their business. And so we've been able to do that and give it back to the industry. We also give it to the Brewers Association as well. So we are hugely passionate about the industry. We're always trying to, I guess, help give new breweries a foot up to get started as well. And I think that's definitely our kind of key strength.
Totally. Yeah, totally. No, sorry, carry on, Jeff.
There's probably two other points that Richard's covered. Great coverage of our key points differentiation. I think the other two things is, one is just around our innovation. So kind of looking at where there's market opportunities that are untapped or underserviced, and ensuring that we either create new products or create a better customer experience. So what Richard talked about wanting to share great beers and make sure that people have a great experience and enjoy the beers they have. And underpinning that is ensuring that people have a great customer experience from the time they land on our site or come into the store, the time they're thinking about kind of ordering again. And then fundamentally, one thing that we've done, so having 12 years in the industry, we've seen quite a lot of different scenarios of what can happen in online commerce and in the beer industry. If it's likely to happen, we've probably seen it in 12 years. And so one thing that we've actually had a heavy focus on was actually driving our business to have quite a lot of processes in it, or designed it to ensure that it's not reliant just on one person, but if we were to take a person out of the business for one reason or another, that it's underpinned by systems and processes. And that fundamentally allows us to keep the train moving and keep things kind of snowballing. And it's definitely been it's a key strength that I believe in our business has got that other businesses don't.
Absolutely. And what you talk about there is really marketing and data, because data has become such an integral part of really successful online marketing, and knowing that data, which otherwise these craft breweries, which if they were to go out and start their own website, they would be asking you heaps of questions about how it all starts. And really, it makes it so much better to just get involved with the beer cartel community. You do that for the other, for the craft breweries, because it makes them want to buy into you, because you care about them, and ultimately you can provide them with that data that shows that actually their breweries are loved by the beer cartel community. And so it's fantastic to hear. And I think this question after from Angela is great to roll into that, because you've already talked about differentiations. We all know that the business is going to continue to exist and continue to grow without the business. So what will the funds do? And I'll kind of piece this together actually with another question that you've got. I'm going to ask what you'll be able to do with the funds that you currently cannot, and really, how it is that the funds will enable you to kind of get your name out there and continue to grow, because you mentioned the market is huge, and we think that you've grown and you've become so well known in the industry, but actually there's so much of it which isn't quite tapped into yet. So Yeah, I know quite a big question to ask, but I know you guys probably have a really solid answer for it.
Yeah, I think that the main one is just all around accelerating our growth. So at the end of the day, we want to get more people to come to Beer Cartel. So it's all about that sort of advertising and marketing side of things. And then when they do come to Beer Cartel, it's all about trying to actually get them to convert. So if you think about a website, it's all of it. You have 100 people that go to your site, and there's a certain percentage that go through to make a sale. And so what we want to do is really focus on increasing that amount, that percentage of people that go through to make a sale. So if you go from 2% to 2 in every 100 people that make a sale to 3%, straight off the bat, you've actually increased your conversion rate by 50%. And we can do that by changes to our website, making it faster, making it better, I guess, addressing challenges or questions that people have when they're going through the checkout process, and really driving on that. So that's the kind of, I guess, it's getting people interested in us, getting them to the website, and then making a purchase. So there's that side of things. The other side is I guess, our beer subscriptions. So subscriptions are kind of what we started with way back in 2009. It's an area that we've had throughout our whole life, but it's something that we can really grow and accelerate. And then the other thing is just trying to, I guess, change people from buying once a year or twice a year with us to actually making them more frequent buyers. And through that, we want to have a membership offer where we can offer them something where they pay a fee for the year, and they get like a reduced a discount on their kind of buying and a shipping offer that makes them want to actually buy from us again and again.
For sure.
So it takes us from being the sometimes store to the always store. And I think that's a huge opportunity. So we've got heaps of people that already love us, but it's changing the amount of occasions that they actually buy from us. And so I guess with that side of things isn't about getting new people, it's just helping those people that already buy from us become more regular customers.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the one key thing of the raise is that obviously it will provide a kitty that we can invest, I guess, more quickly than if we were kind of organically doing it within our business. So could we be doing the things that we want to do without the raise? The answer would be yes. Would it take us longer? The answer would be yes.
Sure.
So fundamentally, it's just going, right, how long is that time frame? Can we actually accelerate the growth and do it faster? And so that the funds from the raise will actually assist us to be able to implement things more quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, we've been doing lots of projects this year to kind of keep the acceleration on the business. So we have been doing a search engine optimization project, and that's all about making sure that we continue to be number one in Google for when you do different searches up there. There's things like this that are already happening. It's just with this raise, we can actually allocate more funds to those sort of growth projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've already talked about this in relation to subscriptions, and you've already, added other, products to the site. Are there any other revenue streams that the business might look to explore in the near or maybe far future, which you've considered adding to the Beer Cartel brand that, may be an opportunity for you post-raise?
I think at the moment the core is just driving what we've got. The other side of things is importation of products. So we know that there are brands that we're struggling to get from our existing supplier base. And so if we can actually get those ourselves, we can get them in the quantities that we know are going to move. So I think that's a big opportunity. We've got, so Beer Cartel itself there's kind of two streams that it's got. So it's got the beers for people that want to buy beers for themselves. And it's got the gifting side of the business. And the gifting side of the business is gifts, whether it's you're giving it to a friend, a family member, or there's corporate gifting. And that's, I guess, the side that bouquets also plays into. And there's a lot of opportunity to really drive that further, particularly in the corporate space. So we know that corporates every year find the challenge of having great gifts to give either employees or clients. And that's something that both Beer Cartel and bouquets can really drive on. So there's huge opportunity in that space as well.
And some of that is just tweaking what we've got experience with doing for over a decade. So it's not kind of reinventing the wheel.
Definitely.
It's just making it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, most definitely. While we've actually, I can see looking at the time and the questions while we've been getting through them have not gone down since we've started. So I really love that everybody's asking all these questions. We're going to try our best to get through the 17 left in the last 10 minutes. If we do spill over a little bit, then what I'll do is just make sure that we get the important information about the investment offer opening next week out before we do go over these other remaining questions. But look, we've been asked a question about what the minimum investment amount is being sought. This is going to be in the offer document, but do you guys want to just fire away the minimum and maximum targets that you're thinking?
Yeah, so as the minimum overall raise, we'll be looking at, so for someone looking to invest, it's going to be $100. As far as how much we're looking to raise, the minimum should be 500,000. Looking to raise up to 2 million.
Awesome, fantastic. And details for the use of funds will be completely broken down in a table which will explain exactly where those funds, the percentage of those funds will go in the offer document. So for the finer details, go to the offer document when the offer is open. Jeremy here has asked if the founders have signed a long-term employment non-compete contracts to ensure that the business is growing through the entity in which the investors are being requested to invest. One thing which I will say as well is investing, when you raise funds through equity crowdfunding, your business is subject to different reporting requirements for other than a normal PTY limited company, and any agreements which are in place from an existing company to another company have to be fair. And there's a lot of restrictions that require a business to completely disclose this so that there are no conflicts and there are no issues. The business itself is going through still a final thorough gatekeeper process from Virtual as the licensed platform, and so we need to make sure that there aren't any conflicts, that there is a clear case for the business being able to go on and grow its business without any issues moving forward. Guys, do you want to ask just to kind of conclude that as well?
Yeah, I guess so. We are still majority shareholders in the business, so we definitely want to see that this business grow well into the future. And we're also directors, and as directors, we have a duty to the company, and we can't act in a way that disadvantages it in any way. And that's part of the reason we actually acquired Bouquets into Beer Cartel, was to remove any conflict of interest. And we actually see both businesses, they do work together really, really well. It's kind of, we were asked a few times why we didn't actually just acquire the business in Beer Cartel when we first did it. And we kind of look back on it and say, oh, yeah, it's a good question.
That's a learning thing, it's we had, as Richard touched on, we had sold a business earlier on in 2013 from memory. And it was kind of one of our first acquisitions was the Bouquets business. So that's put it down to a learning.
Yeah, so
awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not going to go anywhere. We want to see Beer Cartel grow well into the future.
Yeah, awesome. And Stephen here, I know you've asked, or I know you guys have answered a lot of questions around operations and logistics. Stephen here has asked, what are your internal business systems being used to keep up your operations running smoothly with massive growth in place, and with how much you grew over the last year? I'm sure this was really stress tested to the brink, and you really managed to pull through and provide some significant and really strong customer service. So from your perspective, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, so I mean, when we went into COVID lockdown, and we touched on that kind of spiked our online sales, we did have to revisit our internal processes and kind of evaluate what could actually be stripped out without stripping something from the customer experience, and how can we automate certain parts of the actual fulfillment process. And so we managed to do that over the course of, let's say, 3 months, 2 to 3 months, and it was a bit painful because at the same time had actually split our teams into two because of COVID and everyone not really knowing what happens if you were to get COVID and you're in workplaces, everything got to shut down. So at the time we kind of split the teams in two, and across the two teams, Richard was heading up one, I was heading up the other. We were kind of communicating about things we were finding that would actually assist in improving the fulfillment process. And through this kind of step process during COVID, we were actually able to significantly improve the efficiencies in our warehouse and fulfillment. So much so that we got to Christmas, and Christmas normally being our peak time, we kind of got to Christmas, and some days we were like, oh, the warehouse was kind of going, right, well, that was an easy day. Yet they were absolutely putting so many orders, fulfilling so many orders. It was amazing to see the transformation in the space of 12 months from the prior Christmas. And then the other thing is that we have actually found some external partners. So where we do need to have a boost for the kitting requirements. So where, for example, our advent calendars. When you're trying to do 5,000 advent calendars in-house, when we were doing 1,000, I think even the year that we did 3,000, we did 3,000 in sales. I think we did them in-house. But very quickly we kind of found there's a cap. We're not necessarily 100% designed to do all our production, so to speak, of pre-made packs. And so we have found an external partner, which is we're partnering with, that actually allows us to scale that part of the business and take pressure off in peak times from the kind of internal team.
I think the only other thing to add is that we're always looking to review things and refine things. So after Christmas, after all our peak events, we actually go through it and say, okay, what worked well, what can be improved, and so what we do in one season or 1 year isn't necessarily what we do going forward. So there's always ways of going, okay, how can we do this better? And that causes us to reevaluate the systems we use or reevaluate processes that we use, and that's helping us to continue to grow and accelerate that growth as well.
And I think, yeah, the kind of through that process, we've actually instilled that in the team. So we've actually often got team members that come to us and say, well, we're doing it this way, but is that really the best way? Because we decided to do that 2 years ago. So we've actually empowered the team to kind of go, right, is this the best way to do it given X, Y, Z is now kind of happening within our business?
Yeah, definitely. We've still got quite a few questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through some of the ones which I really see as being relevant and beneficial to kind of round up the webinar. I will say to anybody who does have to go, for the investment offer, which I know people are really eager and keen to get involved in. And there's been so many people who have expressed interest, well over 2,000 people who have expressed interest to invest into Beer Cartel. So we're incredibly excited to see this investment offer open. And for all those people who have submitted interest to invest through the virtual website, you'll be getting first access to the investment offer, which will open up privately first. And if you're in that EOI list, you will be receiving a link so you can be one of those first investors in. We're looking to open up on Tuesday next week. So look, keep an eye on your inbox, because we'll be keeping you well informed as to when that offer is opening and how you can get involved. So thank you very much. And look, for some of the questions here, somebody has said, congratulations on building an amazing business. 2 questions. Where do the margins sit for a craft beer retailer? And what do you see any erosion in the future in terms of competitors and big players? We've already kind of touched on competitors and big players in that regard, but you know, the margins is something which I'm sure this is even moving with, you know, the likes of your logistics partners, or, you know, relationships with other craft breweries. And secondly, apologies if I missed it, but what will you be using the proceeds of the raise for? That will be covered in the offer document. But over to you guys to cover the margins question.
Margins we tend to work on. So there's a margin for singles, there's a margin for sort of 4 or 6 packs, there's a margin for cases, there's a margin for our gift packs and everything that we sell. So across Beer Cartel, it's around about a 33.5% margin on those lines. Bouquets works on a higher margin than that. So yeah, they're both reasonable margin businesses. With bouquets, because it's a gifting business, yeah, it can definitely work on a slightly higher margin than that.
Yeah, definitely. And John here has actually said, you know, as you focus on online sales, would you be interested in, or is it looking to be an approach for you to perhaps develop an app to even further improve the process of buying beer through Beer Cartel?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the things that we're going to put funds towards.
Awesome, fantastic. And I'm just really going through these questions and really just making sure that we've covered all bases. So will the Q&A be summarized in a document, please? So what we're going to do is, for everybody, we're going to send over the recording of the webinar to everyone, regardless of if you attended, signed up, if you're in the EOI list. So for everybody who's here, we're going to send you the Q&A afterwards. If there's anything that we really feel is really essential and we want to pick out, we're definitely going to be putting together a few of those questions so people can read them in their own time. You've had still a number of great questions, but I know that we've covered quite a lot of these in a fair amount of detail. Peter here has actually asked a question around your, you know, competition. We've been asked about this already, but when we refer to the likes of something like Diego having relationships with manufacturers, you guys have been in the business for such a long time. You've got really strong relationships with the craft breweries. But is perhaps an overseas market such as New Zealand one that you'd look at, Richard? I'm sure that you've probably thought about this a lot. So
I guess from an overseas point of view, trying to service it from Australia is basically a kind of no-go. So you're trying to send beer from here to New Zealand. It costs a case of beer can cost $80. So it's around about the price that you're actually paying for the beer. Our kind of view or outlook for overseas is, at the moment, is kind of, if we are going to go overseas, that the main thing or the easiest thing that we could do straight off the bat would be to take our gifting business overseas, because it's simple. But the hardest thing is when you have 1,000 different beers and you've got 20 to 30 new beers coming every week, to try and do that in another market, it starts becoming quite complex, and you need to have some really strong systems around it or ways to manage it. If we then go, right, we're going to go from a gifting perspective to start with, and focus on things like our advent calendar, potentially, our dozen packs that we sell, things that we know are really popular, that's a much simpler kind of avenue for going overseas. And if we're to do that, we'll probably look at the likes of the UK as a starting point. The great thing about the UK is it then can be a feeder to the rest of Europe. Whereas if you think of New Zealand, you've got 4 million odd people. So it's a much smaller sort of population base that you're feeding into. So that's definitely something that is an option for us. We haven't, I guess, focused on it for our sort of offer document and where we're going to put funds, apart from the fact that we are going to continue to grow the kind of bouquet side of the business, and that there's definitely an opportunity for taking that globally.
Yeah, of course. And look, Drew here's asked a question: does the subscription model currently run a spend on member retention? Is this an area of investing into? So really, do you spend funds on retaining your current subscribers? I can imagine, obviously, there's a cost for obtaining new customers, but is there a cost that you work out currently just to retain some of those subscribers that you have?
Yeah, so from that perspective, it's something that we're continuing to work on. We know that the strength of the subscription model, but I guess the one thing we probably haven't done over the years is really concentrate on it as much as we potentially could. And that is something that we're kind of working on at the moment. So it's a ongoing process that I guess both the acquire and the retain side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, you know, really from growing the customer base, because I can see that Angela here has asked around, you know, onboarding new customers in and of itself, really how you obtain your customers. I'd really be intrigued actually from the perspective of what is your best stream of you know, onboarding new customers, what area you find to be most effective in onboarding new customers, and where you see yourself really focusing your efforts as a company to continue to grow that, to obviously grow the industry. You've learned so much from what you've done already so far, but I think that rounding this off would be great to talk about not only the future of where you want to go, but also some of the experiments that you'd like to try after the race.
Sure.
Yeah, well, I guess so in terms of where we acquire our customers, being an online business, obviously it's through digital mediums. Now, what necessarily works 6 months ago doesn't always work today. So there can be changes, and we're always kind of at the forefront of what those changes are and testing what is kind of working better in the current climate. So that could be different platforms that people are using, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or new platforms that kind of come to light as the digital age continues to evolve in front of us. In terms of, I guess, general marketing, we don't currently have like a referral program in place, but it's not something that we won't dismiss doing. So we will consider including like a referral kind of program in the future, perhaps at some stage, which then obviously you can then leverage other people's kind of contacts if you're doing it that way.
I think the other thing is Google. So just being at the top of Google, I guess because we started back in 2009, Google's been relatively nice to us and always put us right near the top. And that means that anyone that's looking for craft beer or beer gift, whatever it may be, that they're normally going to find us right up there. And it's an area that, as I said earlier, we're continuing to invest in. The other thing is we do have a really strong database. We've got a really strong following across our social media. And the strength there is that while we have this huge database, we haven't necessarily converted all of those people into customers yet. So they're fans or followers, but there's still lots of opportunity within those to convert them to customers. And the big thing that we wanted to keep doing is growing that database. And the more we can grow it, the more we can convert. So
Definitely.
A lot of opportunity going forward.
Most definitely. And look, I mean, it's been such a journey to get here, and it's really exciting. I think one thing which you mentioned earlier around you've bootstrapped the business to date, and so this is the first opportunity that you're presenting everybody to actually buy and own shares in the business as you continue to grow and continue to scale. And so that's such an exciting opportunity for all of the people who have signed up, who are here today. And I know that we've gone over a little bit, so thank you everybody who's attending still. But look, I really think that that's such an exciting opportunity. We're really thrilled to be opening up the investment offer for Beer Cartel next week. Guys, any closing words or statements that you'd like to make?
I think the main thing is that we're hugely passionate about craft beer industry, and we can't wait to welcome people to the Beer Cartel family.
Yeah, and I just want to thank everyone that's joined us today to hear a bit more about our background, our story, our vision for the future, and that have even just done the step of registering their interest in the EOI. For me personally, and Richard, I'm sure as well, thanks for your time, and we look forward to the opportunity of maybe having you as a future shareholder.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, thanks very much, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks everybody for attending. We'll see you all soon. Take care.
Thanks, Robin.
Bye.
Thank you. And
Bye.
see ya.